After years of stigmatization, misinformation, and prohibition, the psychedelic experience aims to educate and inform in an unfiltered way about the effect that psychedelics have on the lives of real human beings. So please join me in exercising this freedom of expression.
There is only so much you can get out of the medicine work until you do your homework and integrate before you can actually go on to the next level and go deeper. And I think it's also really important to remember that there is no destination. Like, the levels are infinite, and so our job is to be humble along the whole entire way, because we're just these humans, like we're this infinite, powerful, divine beings wrapped up in this very human package.
Okay, I just want to thank the universe and nature for bringing us together, letting us have this conversation. Like we were talking about last night, being open about who you are and talking about it and having that opportunity to be authentic can unlock new levels of healing, and it takes a lot of courage. So I really commend you and respect you for doing this, and I appreciate you coming here.
Thank you. Yeah, I really appreciate that.
Do you want to start with your intention for today?
Yeah. So first of all, thank you. Just thank you for being receptive to creating this opportunity, because I know I had reached out to you originally, which was so divinely inspired. So this feels divine because that was just so synchronistic. So thank you for being receptive and for being where you are and doing what you're doing to create this platform and opportunity. It means a lot to me. So this is really tough for me to do. I'll just put that out there.
Sorry. Is it true that you didn't even know I was doing this kind of thing? You just reached out to me. It's crazy.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, I can't remember what video I was watching where it was one of the videos that you posted recently, and it just came to me. It was just a question. I wonder if he would be interested in interviewing people who have experience working with entheogens. And so I've been recently really just saying yes to those types of urgings. And so I figured, what would it hurt? Maybe he just says, no, I don't really do that. And then you said, wow, that's crazy, because I just began a podcast. So, yeah.
Amazing.
So, yeah, pretty cool stuff.
It's so cool.
Yeah.
So,
and then as far as my intention?
Sure.
Yeah. So for me, at this stage in my healing journey, I have come to somewhat of an impasse where I recognize that in order to move forward and continue on this journey, I'm going to have to start to express my truth and tell my story openly to really whoever is meant to hear it, and I've been resisting that for quite some time because of how difficult it is. Stepping into the realm of being seen and heard and risking the judgment that can come along with that is super scary and very triggering. It's very vulnerable. And so I realized it was time. It was just time to get past that, because at the end of the day, I am okay being uncomfortable. I'm not afraid of being uncomfortable. I know that I have fear around people misinterpreting my intentions. I don't want people to think that I think highly of myself, or that I think that I know better than they do. I don't want to dissuade anybody from hearing what I have to say. And so there's some perfectionism in there and being hypercritical of how I might come across. So all that to say, I'm really just making the choice to step over all of that, and dive in, because I want the reward on the other side of it for myself. So this is for my healing and just to tell my story. I don't think I have anything remarkable or profound to teach or share that hasn't already been said, except nobody can tell my story. So that is my intention today.
Very true. Well said.
Thank you.
For the record, I think that everybody has a very unique story, and I'm excited to hear yours. So where do we start?
Yeah, where do we start? Well, really at the beginning, right? If we're talking about the story of Stephanie, which is this avatar I'm in at the moment, we'll go back to childhood, because that's where really things start to unfold. My parents were both married previously before they met. They both had children. My mom had 2 sons. My dad had a daughter. And they met in church. And they were only married really long enough to have me. I was about 1.5 years when they divorced. So I don't have any memories of them being together as a couple, or our family, the blended family that we had. My earliest memory, in fact, is of them fighting and me trying to intervene and standing between them. It's such a weird, visceral memory. I must have been maybe 3, but it was traumatic at the time, which is why it stuck with me. But I was standing and holding my arms out between them, trying to stop them. So going forward, I lived between the 2 of them, back and forth. My memories are of them like speaking really ill of each other all the time. So anytime I was with my dad, he was always saying really terrible things about my mom, and vice versa. Both my parents came from pretty dysfunctional homes. My mom's dad was a military drill sergeant. He was a Marine drill sergeant. And her mom was a stay-at-home mom. Their house was full of violence and anger, and she was really not empowered in her voice, and sort of became the black sheep. But has had many, many struggles throughout her life. Coming into the relationship with my dad was one of them, which was why it was short-lived. There was domestic violence. And then my dad's parents, they didn't even want kids, you know. My grandmother didn't even really like kids. My dad was a child of a previous relationship when she met the grandfather I grew up with. And so my dad was treated a little bit like poorly in their home, singled out in a way by his father, his stepfather. So naturally both my parents found each other because they were very dysfunctional in their own right. And my mom will admit it, at least. I'm not sure as much about my dad, but so growing up with them and in separate homes with them was very, very, very difficult. I spent about 3 years living with a stepfamily. My dad had remarried a woman who had already 4 children. She had 3 boys and a little girl who was my age, and the boys were older than me. And I, for whatever reason, maybe had some like ADHD issues, highly sensitive, and my stepmother was not a fan of me at all. And granted, I was only 3 years old, but some kids can be difficult, and I get that. During that time, I became the black sheep, and I was really ostracized by my stepfamily from the ages of 3 to about 6. I was a daddy's girl, and I really wanted to be with him and spend time with him, but he was mostly concerned with working and supporting this new family that he had. And I just remember missing him all the time, and really confused about why he was always gone. And I think because I resisted and was so upset about him being gone, it just created this turmoil in the family when he was gone and I was home. And so I was subjected to a lot of sort of cruelty by my stepfamily, by my stepmother and her kids. She was sort of the ringleader, and I was just a small child, so I didn't understand. I didn't understand what was happening or why. I just internalized all of it. So there ended up being some abuse. My older stepbrother and I started playing house in the garage, if you will. I was, again, maybe like 4 years old at the time, and he was about 8. So I didn't understand. In fact, at the time, I remember that I was so happy to have attention, to have what I thought was positive attention. And I don't remember exactly how long that went on for. I don't think it was very long before, during a visitation with my mom, it came out that that was happening in my dad's home with my stepbrother. And at that point, I went to go live with my mom. And so that abuse stopped at that point, and being exposed to the stepfamily that I was in. So some of my best memories are from about 6 to 11, when I was living with my mom's sons, my older brothers. And they were very special to me. They treated me well, and I felt like a member of the family. So my mom was recovering from drug addiction. That was why I went to go live with my dad for those years in the first place. She was fighting her own battles. I think that the big takeaway from those years were issues around abandonment and neglect. I didn't get the nurturance or the protection or the guidance that I needed in those critical years. I was just very much fending for myself, and also feeling very rejected and not knowing why. So fast forward, growing up with my mom, I love her. We have a good relationship. She's my best friend now, but only because of the work that we've done to get here, because she was willing to take responsibility for and apologize for the ways that she didn't show up for me when I was little. But when I was little, she had a very hard time being emotionally present and attentive to my needs emotionally. So again, I just was on my own and became an internalizer. I could like tell the whole story. I don't know. I went on to start abusing drugs at 16. I started drinking at 17. I dropped out of high school to be with my 24-year-old boyfriend when I was 17. I really had no foundation. I left home at 17 and kind of was just out on my own in the world and really winging it, and started developing my independence at that stage in the game. I didn't feel that anybody was going to be there for me, or that I was worthy for anybody to be there for me. So I had to be there for myself. And by the time I was 19, I had just been fired from my job at Costco. My car had just broken down. I lost my apartment that I was sharing with my two friends, and ended up sort of just like staying with a friend in downtown Seattle. No car, no job, no home, no money. But of course, I wasn't going to let that stop me from going out, you know. And so I went out to a club that night, like an 18 and over club, and I met my now ex-husband there. I very, very quickly fell in love with him, mainly just because I thought that he was so attractive. I thought he was out of my league. I didn't know him. I didn't even know myself at that time. And then after just a month of knowing each other, he asked me to marry him. And then I said yes, with the attitude that if it doesn't work out, we'll just get divorced, you know. I wasn't too worried about it. But I ended up falling in love with him. And then finding out that he suffered from severe alcoholism. And it was a very angry person. And as much as there was physical violence and domestic violence, there was far more emotional abuse and psychological abuse. I didn't know it, but he was very, very insecure, and I made him feel threatened. And so he would just cut me down as often as he could. And I think the childhood that I had, the upbringing that I had really sort of laid the foundation for that type of relationship to even occur. I say to people when they ask me about that time in my life, it was that I was just sort of like a spineless jellyfish. I felt like everything he said was right, and if only I could figure out how to be better or do better, then he would love me and treat me well. So, you know, my marriage, it was volatile. It was really hard. I really loved him. I really did love him. And I think one of my qualities is that I love fully. So I just have a very big heart. And I tried and tried and tried. And then at some point, and it must have been after like maybe his like fourth or fifth time being arrested for violence, whether it was towards me or somebody else, I finally realized that I needed to get out. So I signed up for the military because he was in the Army, and I saw the benefits of being in the military. And I figured at that point I didn't have any education, I didn't have any money or any support, and I needed something to help me fall back on. And so I signed up for the Army Reserves and shipped out to Fort Jackson, South Carolina for basic training. One of the best experiences of my life, like really, really taught me how tough I am and that I'm not afraid of a challenge. And when I'm challenged, I rise to the occasion. So in my 6th week of training, I had been sick the whole time. Like I was just, every time someone caught a cold, I caught it. Once I caught it, it never went away. I I stopped having my cycle, and everybody said that's normal, and I never thought twice about it. I just thought I was one of the lucky ones that didn't have to worry about that while I was in training. I really didn't think twice. And then in my 6th week of training, I collapsed when we were getting ready to do like this live fire range. Yeah. And so they take me into med call, and come to find out I was pregnant. I had been pregnant the whole time I was there.
Wow.
And yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. It was wild. It was a wild time in my life. And, we had still been together up until the point that I shipped out to basic training. And I was kind of trying to slide out the back door. I didn't let him know why I was going in. So the night before I shipped out, I brought him to the hotel room that they bring everybody together. When you sign up for the military, they bring everybody together into a hotel room. That way they have the whole night to go and hunt people down, and then you leave at like 5 a.m. So, as much as I was ready to leave him, I still loved him. And that night, I kicked my roommate out and was like, my husband's coming. And we conceived my daughter. And I wouldn't have had it any other way, because she's the best thing that's happened to my life. But it sort of, things didn't go the way I planned. So I went back home to Seattle to him. I gave birth to my daughter. He went to Iraq 6, maybe 4 weeks after she was born for an 18-month deployment. During that time, I was able to kind of have this break from the chaos of being in that relationship. And also, I became a mom. And although I was financially supported, I was essentially a single mom because everything was on me. And it really changed the landscape. So where I had been willing to be in that relationship previously, because I didn't have the self-worth that I needed to say that this is wrong, I became a mom, and I fell in love with my baby girl, and she was my reason for finally leaving. So when he got back from Iraq, I had made some feeble attempts to try and continue the relationship, but I was emotionally pretty checked out. And so he got out of the service. They sent him back to Texas, where he's from, and we never heard from him again, which was a huge, huge blessing. Huge blessing for us. Fast forward, I just became this really ferocious mama bear, willing to do whatever it took to provide for my daughter. But I stayed very, very independent. Still didn't have a lot of family support, and all my friends were in their early 20s. I was 21, and I had a baby girl, and no education, and no career, and really nothing but myself. And so, my life at that point just became about survival. Just taking care of my daughter at any cost. And I'll admit that there are parts of my story I'm not ready to go into yet. Like we've talked about, and I really appreciate you respecting that. I will be at some point. But this is a big enough step for me as it is. So fast forward, 17 years of raising my daughter on my own. I hit a critical mass when she was about 4 years old. I struggled with addictive behaviors to nicotine and cannabis, and food was a huge one for me. When she was 4, I weighed around 265 pounds, and I lived in pretty unhealthy conditions because I didn't know how to keep a house. I didn't know how to cook or really just take care of basic daily needs. I made sure that my daughter was fed, but we ate a lot of fast food. And she didn't mind because she's little, you know. Kids will eat McDonald's and Taco Bell, and we did. But it started really taking a toll on me. And so, yeah, she was about 4 years old. I was in a lot of physical pain from my weight and a tremendous amount of emotional pain, to the point that in addition to the addictive behaviors, I also struggled with a lot of depression and anxiety. And at this time, I just remember being depressed to the point of suicidal ideation. I wasn't making plans, but I had a lot of hatred in my heart for all of the people that I felt obligated to live for.
So at some point in this journey, ayahuasca comes into play. How did that happen?
Yeah, so I think that the medicine was preparing me for the time when it was going to come. And that happened in 2012. So I met my older sister who had been estranged, and discovered that she was highly allergic to gluten. She was celiac. So I started thinking, like, well, maybe if I changed my diet a little bit, I would feel better. I wouldn't be so emotionally and mentally unhinged. I started eating a little better. I started learning how to make chicken and rice at home. I started losing weight. Within 6 months, I was in a severe car accident. And after the accident, I started working with a chiropractor, and he introduced me to the world of holistic wellness. So he helped me get off of the pharmaceuticals, and he introduced simple things like magnesium, tryptophan, exercise. I started doing yoga because I couldn't do like regular workouts in the gym because I had some neuropathy in my feet, and yoga you could do barefoot. And so my life started taking a different trajectory, and I didn't realize that it was preparing me for something. So it was 2014, after about 2 years of having this lifestyle shift, where I started just living a little bit healthier, was when I had the dream that I told you about. And so throughout my life, I've always had like flying dreams where I can fly more or less. And sometimes it's like soaring over fields and between buildings, and other times it's like just hovering off of the ground. I can barely get off the ground. And in this particular dream, I was standing outside in the grass, and it was like dusk. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, I just shot off the surface of the earth, straight out into the cosmos, into the blackness of space. And all of a sudden, a firework exploded, and I was in the middle of it. And I just could see all around me this massive exploding firework. And it was so visceral and real, like I can still put myself back there to this day. So after that dream, within about a week, I was cruising Netflix, came across a documentary called DMT, The Spirit Molecule. And it's based on the book by Rick Strassman. So up to that point, I had no experience with any psychedelics, mushrooms, and really, frankly, no interest or curiosity about them at that point. but something piqued my interest, and I just started watching it. And it got to the part in the documentary where it was talking about ayahuasca, and this guy is describing a dream that he had, or part of his journey that he had, where he was seeing the Emerald City, and he was able to turn the knob up and down on the volume and brightness of this city. And something about it really made me go, I wonder if that would replicate the dream that I had, or I wonder if it would be something like the dream that I had. And so that started and kicked off this curiosity. So within a week from that point, I met someone casually, like just in my daily life. And it was the first and only person that I ever asked, have you ever heard of ayahuasca? And, little did I know at the time that this person had not just heard of it, but had many, 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 many years of experience working with that medicine. And he just sort of smiled, slyly, and said, yeah, I might know something. So within a month, it was 4th of July, 2014, I sat in my first ceremony. And I sat for one night, and it changed my world. It absolutely changed my world. And I want to say that my intention isn't to say that I think everybody should do ayahuasca, because I don't. The medicine it's a warrior medicine. It's not for the faint of heart, and it's not for the fragile. A lot of people would need a lot of work to get to the point where they're really ready for it. And it can be harmful for the wrong person. So I just want to put that out as a disclaimer, that my intention here is not to say I did ayahuasca, everybody should do ayahuasca, but only to say that the medicine work of ayahuasca called to me, prepared me for it, and brought me into the work, and has had a profound impact on my life as a result. So that's how I got started with the medicine journey.
And was it a difficult first ceremony?
Yes, it was, yes. I remember when I first approached the facilitators to drink, she asked me what my previous experience was with psychedelics. And I said, none. And she was surprised. And she's like, no mushrooms, no nothing. I was like, no. And so she's like, okay. And I think she probably gave me a lighter dose because of that. Because I wasn't really feeling much after the first hour. But what did happen, which was really interesting, was I remember when I went into the space originally, I was very, very excited about how I was proud of myself for being so open-minded to be willing to do something like this. But I really had no idea what I was getting into. In fact, I walked into the space and I asked my friend, what are the buckets for? I didn't know. I really didn't know. And at that time, there weren't a whole lot of like videos and documentaries, and there wasn't a lot of like big names and figures doing the work. So I just didn't know. But I was very proud of how open-minded I was to be in this space. And then when the medicine started to work, but I didn't know it, it showed me my skepticism and my closed mind, because I thought that everybody in the room was faking it, and there was no way in hell that I was going to sit there and pretend just so that I could be cool and fit in with these people. And I got very mad. I got really frustrated. And I remember sitting there and crossing my arms and being like, I'm not doing it. You guys are weird. There's no way. And I just got angry and was like, this is a joke. You've got to be kidding me. I'm not playing. I'm not playing your game. And then all of a sudden I started thinking to myself, like, well, maybe it's the metal. Maybe it's the metals on my body, like my belly button ring. So I take out my belly button ring. That's why it's not working. And I set it aside. I'm like, oh yeah, I have a metal wire in my bra. So I take off my bra and I set it aside. And I'm sitting there. And all of a sudden I realize I'm sitting there without my bra on. And I'm like, oh, I think something's happening. This is unusual behavior for me. So I start to become aware that, yes, I am feeling different, and I don't really understand why, but I'm not really having the experience that I thought it would be. And so I went up for a little bit more medicine. And so I go up for more medicine. I drink another cup, go back to my space, and within maybe 3-4 minutes, the female facilitator comes around singing for everyone. So it was her first time singing for me, and she came to me and she asked me how I was feeling, and I said, I don't feel a whole lot yet. She's like, I said, but I did just take some more. And she was like, oh, good job, good job. So she starts singing for me. And I remember she took my hands in her hands, and all of a sudden I pass out cold. Like I had been sitting upright in front of her, and I just remember suddenly I'm laying down and I don't know where I'm at. And I look up and I look around, and I had completely passed out and fallen straight back. And so I don't know, that hasn't happened to me since then during a journey of like just totally going out all the way. But when I came back and sat back up and she finished her song, then my journey began. And it started for me with like physical movements that I was not controlling, specifically my hands. So my fingers were just moving by themselves. And I remember like looking down at my hands and being like, do you guys see this? Like, this is so weird. Like, why are my hands moving? And then after a while, I was conducting like a symphony orchestra, totally involuntarily, and then like flying. And I was enjoying finally starting to understand what everybody else in the room was feeling, at least I thought. And sinking into this experience of something new and different, until the grief hit me. And I remember starting to feel like this deep sadness. And I didn't have any personal story attached to it. It wasn't any memory or thought or feeling of my own experience that came up. It was just this incredible sadness. And I cried and cried and cried, but like very quietly and stifling, because at that point, I hadn't really been exposed to a safe space where I could emote openly or loudly and feel safe. And so it mostly stayed inside me, but it was very, very heavy and very, very hard. At one point I got up to go to the bathroom, and I was using the restroom, and I remember feeling like, oh, I feel like I might purge, like I might vomit, and I had my bucket there, and then suddenly I started hearing Native American chanting, like very, very audibly in my ears, to the point where I was like looking around for the open window and trying to figure out where it was coming from. And then I finally covered my ears to see if it was actually coming from inside me, and it was. And it was so loud, it was so clear. That was when I was like, whoa, this is something else. I don't know what's happening, wow, but it is something else.
Wow.
So yeah, first one was hard, but it definitely was just an introduction. Yeah.
did ayahuasca ask you to get into yoga?
Yeah. Thank you for
Tell me
reminding
about
me.
that.
Yeah. Yeah. So it was in that first journey ever that
Okay.
I received this very clear message. Um, if you remember, I had started doing yoga prior to this experience, just as a way of feeling better, getting more exercise in my body, and it was easy to do barefoot. And I got hooked on it. My body loved to move in that way, loved to stretch and feel strong and balanced. So I'm having my journey, and all of a sudden I see a vision of myself in down dog, and the message was just very matter of fact: become a yoga teacher. And I remember at the time being like, no, ugh, that's just my ego. I just want to be important. I want to be at the center of attention. No. I'm not going to become a yoga teacher. That was my initial reaction to the message. Which is so funny, like how the ego can interfere and be like, no, you're being egotistical. That is the ego.
Mm.
And so I held on to it though. The seed had been planted, and I moved forward and decided to go ahead and do my yoga teacher training and went to Swiha. And when I started my training, that was when I realized why I had been called into that path. Because up until that point, I hadn't been exposed to a lot of spiritual practices or philosophies. I was definitely open-minded thanks to my mom. She really bestowed that gift on me of just being open to possibilities and being curious about things and people in life. But when I started studying yoga, I just remember like feeling emotional because it was confirmation as to why the medicine had brought me into that space. It wasn't so I could become a teacher. It was so that I could be taught. However, after training and graduating, and eventually stepping into teaching, I realized how powerful teaching is as a healing tool for the self. And ayahuasca is the reason why I became a yoga teacher, and I absolutely love teaching yoga.
Um, it reminds what you just said about how powerful teaching can be for yourself, for your own healing journey. It reminds me of a song that I really like that says, "When you raise your vibration, I raise my vibration too."
Yeah.
Where do we go next?
Well, shoot. I'd love to talk about like some of the ways that doing the medicine work has changed me from where I was into where I'm at now. So I could probably talk for like 10 hours about the lessons and the
Mm-hmm.
changes and the things that I do and say and think differently now. But I think the most critical ones are that I have opened myself up to relationship with people. So whereas I used to be very, very fearful and distrusting of people, had a really hard time feeling confident enough in myself to be able to show up authentically. Now I show up and I take chances on new friends, and I invest in the friends that I have. I am willing to be honest when I'm hurt by someone, whereas before I would just hide and internalize it and make it my fault. Going to like social gatherings with medicine family and the tribe, I show up every opportunity that I can, even when I'm nervous or a little uncomfortable or a little self-conscious. Like I just show up anyway. So that just doing that, being open to connection and being open to experiencing like what love is, not from a romantic standpoint, but from a standpoint of human connection and being vulnerable with each other and real and authentic, has completely changed my world. So now I just don't feel alone anymore. Even in my darkness and even in my sadness, when those waves come through, that voice that tries to say like, oh, nobody cares about me, nobody loves me, it's just laughable now because I know it's not true. Because I'm surrounded with people that love me, that I love. So that like is one of the biggest changes in my life. I also now have like this ability to move through emotion with ease. I can allow it, and it doesn't spiral itself into suffering. I can just observe it, experience it, whether it's fear or anger or sadness or whatever it is. I just give myself the space to feel, and I honor those emotions by feeling them fully and knowing that it's temporary and it's just a wave that'll pass. And as I do that, it starts to become this dance with life where the more I honor and give space for the difficult experiences, the easier it is to just shift right back into love and joy and gratitude. And so yeah, those are like the big things. I also, I told you I have a small ear. It won't stay in. I also have a sense of self-discipline now that I didn't have before. I recognize that self-discipline is like the highest form of self-love. It's the greatest act of self-love is to have self-discipline. And so when I don't feel like doing something and I make myself do it, it doesn't feel like I'm like a bad thing. It feels like a very honorable, kind thing to do for myself. So now I enjoy cleaning my house and I enjoy washing my face before I go to bed and making my bed in the morning. And I don't have to be perfect and do all the things all the time, like to be okay with myself. But when I can and I do it, it's very fulfilling and rewarding. And so little by little, as I continue to implement self-discipline in my life, like things just keep getting better and better. And so yeah, as far as your question was, where do we go from here? Like what's next? What's forward? Well, my daughter's 17 now. She'll be 18 in a couple of months. And she's getting ready to graduate high school. She wants to study marine biology. She, I think, has a soul connection with sharks and whales and possibly mermaids too. So the ocean is calling her, which has been tough for me because I don't know why, but that gives me a little bit of it's a big ocean, you know? So it makes me nervous, her being out there, but also I want her to live her dreams. So, and she's adventurous. So she's going to go to college and study marine biology. And the last 18 years of being a single mom and raising my daughter on my own is coming to a close. Of course, I'll always be a mother and I'll always be there for her. But my life is about to shift in a pretty big way. And so that's really exciting. And the dreams that are calling to me, I'm getting ready to go back into ceremony after 2.5 years of integration. This right now, just doing this interview, is a huge, huge part of my integration process of what I've been called up to do through the medicine work. And so I'm nervous, but also proud of myself and kind of excited about breaking through that ceiling. And so I'm excited about going back to ceremony and being able to kind of like have that stripe. Like I followed, like I listened, and I know that there's always such great rewards when we listen. So I'm really excited about going back into the medicine circle, diving back into the ethereal, and getting new callings. But I think that moving forward, I am feeling a strong desire to continue to speak out about my experiences and my story. My intention being to just offer some hope and inspiration to whoever needs it. I think there's a lot of people doing that, and that's wonderful. It's so, so important. It's so good that we have people doing that because the world really needs it. And I'm not doing it because I think that it's specifically special or important for me to do it for other people, but it's important for me to do it for me. So I'm going to continue sharing my story, sharing my experiences with medicine work, continue doing the medicine work. I feel called back to the jungle for another dieta, and probably more after that. And then probably down the line, the vision that I have is owning a large amount of land, abundant fertile land with water and good soil, and a space for ceremony, a space where people can come and reconnect with our roots, reconnect with nature, which is nature is my church. I learn everything from nature, from the elements. They've been here much longer than we have.
Yep.
And so yeah, so that's my vision for the future.
Amazing. I just want to go back to, you said you took a break for 2 years. Was it important? Was it important to take a break, and why was it important?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. It was definitely important. Well, I went through a year and a half, probably 2 years of just hitting it really hard. I was going to a lot of ceremonies. Probably every 2 or 3 months, I was back in ceremony, and I did a lot of deep work. But I was also kind of procrastinating some of the messages that I had received in that time. I reached a point after I went to Peru and did the 9-day dieta in the jungle. I came back, and within a month I sat in ceremony again, and the messages that I got were like, I got nothing more for you, kid. I've given you everything that you could possibly need right now, and so you have got to go and implement and do these things, and it takes time. It's not something you can cram for and procrastinate to the last minute. It takes time and processing. And so it was a little bit hard to hear that, because I realized that this is actually the real work that happens is outside of the ceremony circle. In this 3D realm is the real work, and in our hearts and minds. So it's been a really beautiful journey. One of the main themes is my voice, coming into my voice, using my voice to assert myself, to speak words of love, and to be more honest about when I have loving feelings towards friends or even strangers. To be able to sing in front of people, that's been a huge part. To just step more into my offerings with confidence, and not pride that comes from a sense of achievement or status, but just pride that comes from a sense of like, I'm proud of myself for reaching this stage. And therefore, I'm going to offer my gifts to people because it's going to help. People need it, you know? And I think too, like, there is only so much you can get out of the medicine work until you do your homework and integrate before, you can actually go on to the next level and go deeper. And I think it's also really important to remember that there is no destination. Like, the levels are infinite. And so our job is to be humble along the whole entire way. Because we're just these humans, like we're this infinite, powerful, divine beings wrapped up in this very human package. And to just be humble and continue to be courageous, so.
Last thing that I want to ask you today, there is a lot of division about ayahuasca in North America. Should we be able to use it? Should we not? Can you tell us if we should be able to use it if we want to, and why?
Oh yeah, 100%. 100%. I support the use of the medicine anywhere. And the reason being, well, first and foremost, because of human sovereignty, right? As a human being, we are born with a divine birthright to be sovereign over our consciousness. So that means that if I want to go and eat grass and it makes me feel giddy, then I have that right to do that if it's not harming anybody else. So yes, we are sovereign beings that have the divine right, the God-given right, not given by the government, but endowed by Source, to choose what we do with our own body and our own mind and our own consciousness. So number one. Number two, as far as the medicine being available in like North America versus South America versus, maybe like other indigenous cultures where they practice medicine work. I think the most important thing is that we are one human family. It doesn't matter. Our DNA is 98% identical. The things that make us different are so minute and tiny. The visual differences in our human beingness is so small. I don't think the medicine wants us to distinguish ourselves and to overly identify with these human vessels, because it's not who we really are. Who we really are these divine, infinite beings who came here with purpose. And in order to fulfill that purpose, I think everybody should have access, regardless of where they live or what their race or heritage or lineage is. It's not about that. It's not about that at all.
Excellent. Well, thank you for your courage. Thank you for your authenticity. You are part of the evolution of human consciousness, and I really appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you so much for all the great questions and just for giving me a platform. So much gratitude for you. Thank you.